So now as far as why bringing it with lactate is a good modification of the butter, why it's useful for the coffee. It's actually going to do three things at once very effectively. But the first thing to understand here is the reasons tri-butyrate is more effective than butyrate in terms of bioavailability are because it's a higher molecular weight, and there's various reasons that makes it take longer for intestines to process. And these intestinal cells need to break the butter down to a single molecule to process it. This on its own, just increasing the molecular weight of it and time of digestion by cells, improves the bioavailability by like 5-10 times. But there's huge room for improvement still, because the thing is, butter is the main source of energy by colonic cells. That's basically anything that gets it processed before it reaches the colon or increases the time it takes for it to get to the colon would improve the bioavailability. Now, lactate bringing it is a really good way of doing this because it allows the butter to use the lactate transporter, which it turns out is the glucose transporter, the fastest, highest priority transporter in the human body. So basically this would save all of it from colon processing, get it into the bloodstream pretty much immediately, which is useful because then there's very fast transport into the brain. Stuff transports via the glucose transporter into the brain in literally seconds, which is good because we actually want to get this in before the caffeine. It's pretty much the only ingredient that it's important to get in before the caffeine. The reason is we're trying to use this to upregulate TH signaling in people with caffeine tolerance. Caffeine has incredibly fast effects where the first effects kick in within 5 minutes, although it doesn't hit its peak until later. So there's very few things that can go faster than caffeine since we have such a long evolutionary history with it. But the lactate allowing use of the glucose transporter will definitely get in there faster. Since pretty much all butyrate bioavailability problems result from this, since the glucose transporter is one of the most efficient transporters in the body, and since lactate, as a short-chain fatty acid that is actually highly used by the brain, has incredibly efficient transport, this could be dozens of times more effective than tri-butyrate. That's what I would expect. Even if it was just as effective as tri-butyrate, that's already 5 to 10 times better. But I actually strongly believe this will be the best way of increasing butter uptake by the brain that's easy for it to do. And not only is it going to make it more brain targeted, but it's going to influence the targeting in some interesting ways, which we're going to discuss in a second, which might improve the effects. But first of all, there's one other thing to get into, which is actually lactate is a short-chain fatty acid that, like butter, is also an HDAC inhibitor. It's not as strong of an HDAC2 inhibitor, but this isn't dead weight. It's going to have all the same benefits of butter to an extent. It's also going to make it, I believe, more brain targeting and even more targeting towards myelination, which is good because that's not a process we know how to influence much with supplements. In terms of why, it's been found oligodendrocytes are the cells in the brain that most prefer lactate as an energy source. These are the support cells that do myelination, so it's probably going to improve gating into oligodendrocytes. As well as this, let me think, is there anything else that's interesting?